too, that could have a big year.
Well, let's move over to the defensive side of the ball. And as you might expect, there with that new head coach leading the way there for the Aggies, there's a new defensive coordinator there, and that's Joe Morris. He comes to New Mexico State from Sam Houston State, where he most recently served as their defensive coordinator. What style of defense can we expect to see from Coach Morris?
Yeah, I mean that's to be seen a little bit, right? With personnel changes, kind of learning on the fly. Some of the personnel they had during spring ball, it's different now. You add guys, you lose guys after spring ball. But a lot of people around here are really excited about what Joe Morris can do. That Sam Houston defense last year, they were tenacious. I think back to their BYU game last year when it was 14-0. They lost, but their defense kept them in the game. Sam Houston was here at Aggie Memorial Stadium last year. The New Mexico State offense kind of had their way in the first half, and then he made some second half adjustments, and the offense for the Aggies could not push the football. So he impressed a lot of people during the course of last season, and a lot of the personnel is new. Nate Dreiling did a wonderful job with the defense the last couple of years. If you ask me what was the biggest change going from the struggles of the program up until 2 years ago when the program started to flip, I think the play of the defense as a whole was a big part of it. You didn't have to score 40 points to win a game anymore. You could win a game 20-17 or win a game 17-10 because that defense was so good. And, Nate Dreiling had great players playing for that defense, and a lot of those guys are gone. So I think we'll get some of those questions answered early on during fall camp.
Well, let's talk about that personnel that's going to be running Coach Morris's defense. Let's start with the defensive line. I'm trying to keep track of all of the transfers, and if I'm counting correct, they lost 5 guys to the portal, but they also gained 5 guys from the portal. Tell me, what do I need to know about this defensive line and what we can expect from them in 2024?
Well, that was one of the things that really helped the defense have success the last couple of years. Is they did a really good job of getting to the quarterback. They ran a defense in which a linebacker was actually on the line for Nate Dreiling. He called this position the stud position, and Gabe Peterson ran that position, and Gabe transferred to Houston. But they really got after the quarterback. And, the key piece that does return is Buda Paletti. He's the other guy who's at Media Day today for New Mexico State. Buda played a little bit as a freshman, had a breakout year last year, was kind of under the radar out of California in high school. And, Buda's a name that a lot of people around here know well. And I think, he could have a breakout year. And he's probably one of the key guys that needs to be a leader on that defensive line out of the gate.
All right. Well, I kind of put Paletti there in that linebacking group. I mean, I think by the roster, he's on an O-line, but he might play more defensive lineman there in that stud position. But the linebacking group loses their leading tackler, and I'm going to call him an Iron Man from a year ago, Keyshawn Elliott. He played 900. He dang near played about 1,000 snaps. That's just like amazing, especially, people coming on and off the field and getting hurt and whatnot. So that was pretty amazing. But while this room lost its fair share, they have guys like Sone Apiu, and then, like you said, Buda Paletti, they're returning. They also brought in Avery Morris from UTSA after spring ball. What can we expect from this room in 2024?
Sone Apiu, another guy, kind of like Donovan Faupel, who, last year at this time, nobody was really talking about him, and played a lot early and just started to gain the trust of the defensive staff and had a really good year. I think his role is definitely bigger now. The person you referenced earlier was Keyshawn Elliott, who was everywhere last year. I mean, he was an Iron Man. He was a workhorse. And New Mexico State has always had good linebackers. A couple of years ago, they had Chris Ojo and Trevor Brohard. And this time last year, the question was, well, how do you replace those two? Can Keyshawn Elliott handle the load? He did. Keyshawn's gone now to Arizona State. So next man up might be Sone Apiu. Tyler Martinez had a lot of snaps a year ago. I think he'll be a big part of that linebacker crew as well. So that's a big group going into the year. That's, of course, an important group, and there just isn't a lot of FBS experience in that room. They added a lot of pieces, but somebody has to step up outside of the returners like Martinez and Alpiu.
Well, this defensive backfield was hit hard between the portal and graduation. They lost their number 2 through number 5 leading tacklers from a year ago via the portal. Dylan Early and Keontae Glinton are some of those guys that are coming back with the most game experience here in 2024. What are you expecting from them in the secondary in 2024?
Having those two guys back is key. Dylan's had a really good career. Keontae was at Wyoming first and then came here. So, it's a different coaching staff. So, and it's likely a different scheme. So it's hard to say that continuity is huge. But I think having somebody who's played at this level, who's been in this program, who knows what the grind is like, that'll certainly help that crew. They were really good the last 2 years. Miles Rouser kind of came onto the scene a year ago. Andre Seldon, who was a key part of that secondary the last 2 years and transferred after Jerry Kill left. Andre was at Utah State, and Andre, I don't know if you read this, but he tragically passed away last weekend. An accident, a diving accident at a lake in Utah. Andre was just a wonderful player and wonderful human being. So our thoughts and prayers are with his family. So New Mexico State, has had to replace a lot of guys in that secondary because of the portal going back to December. But having Early and Glinton back, those are two key pieces. Josiah Cox is a name that's come up a lot ever since spring ball. So that crew is going to have to be good, and it goes hand in hand, right? If the line can put pressure on the quarterback, it makes the secondary better as well. And it just seemed like that defense made big play after big play down the stretch during that 10-win season a year ago.
Do you anticipate some of those transfers that they brought in the winter to make an impact for the Aggies in 2024? I know you mentioned Cox there that comes in from Arizona State, but is there anybody else that you really anticipate stepping up there?
Yeah, they're going to have to. I mean, there's going to have to be players that step up, probably some JUCO guys. And that's the thing about, JUCO players, whether you bring them in early or after spring ball, there is a learning curve. So I've seen it before where, somebody is there for spring ball and maybe doesn't have a click until fall camp, or somebody that misses spring ball and just gets fall camp, and it just takes deeper into the season for them to kind of understand things and make that transition. The key part of the defense the last 2 years, I tell people this all the time, one of the biggest reasons why the defense was so successful is because they had depth. They were 2 or 3 deep at every single position, and it didn't matter who was on the field. You could give guys a rest and keep them fresh for the fourth quarter, and there wasn't a drop-off. So building depth is so crucial at this level, and it's really hard to do at the group of 5 level. In the really good group of 5 programs, that's the separator. Is they have depth on defense. And that's a big reason why New Mexico State was so strong defensively the last 2 years.
So if you had to pick a defensive player to have a breakout type season here in 2024, who are you picking?
I think Buda Paletti is probably the obvious choice because he's been a guy the last couple of years, but hasn't been a star. And we've been able to see him play, and he showed glimpses of what he can be. Noah Arinze is a guy who transferred in a couple of years ago from Oklahoma. Heralded recruit. He's 6'6", he's 260. He looks the part. I think if he can put things together, he could really have a big year. So that's another guy to keep your eye on.
All right. Well, with fall camp coming up, and you kind of mentioned, some of the strength previously have been the defensive depth. What are, some position group or groups that you feel is the most concerning?
Well, I think you look at defense, probably linebacker, D-line, where you have to replace a lot of players. I think offensively, the O-line's in good shape. The quarterback room, I still think, will figure itself out. Running back room, good. Wide receivers, they're replacing a lot, but I'm not sure how much they're going to have to throw the football this year, especially early on. So I think defense, especially on the line and at linebacker. But they're excited about the guys they brought in. That's the wonder of the portal is sometimes, it's addition by subtraction in some cases. And there were some really good players available late in the portal because players can get lost in the portal sometimes, right? Maybe you're looking at how many stars they had in high school or where they came from. Maybe a guy that was at a JUCO is a better option than somebody who only played in 3 games at, let's say, Oklahoma a year ago, because people forget about him. So they do have options, in fall camp. I just think now more than ever, with the day and age of the transfer portal, is really, really important for those couple of weeks to get ready for the season opener.
Now, talking about that transfer portal, I don't know what the scholarship situation there is at New Mexico State. Are they pretty much set there going into the fall unless somebody falls into their laps, or what is there anything that they're looking to add?
I think they're set, but I'm not 100% sure. It's been crazy because I've never seen it like this, where recruiting is still going on, pretty long after spring ball, right? I mean, with the portal reopening after spring ball, it just puts an interesting wrinkle in everything. So there's been more shuffling than I've ever seen, of course, coaches, players. But, I remind folks, New Mexico State is losing players to the Power Conference, right? I mean, a lot of the players went to Vanderbilt. They had a guy go to Syracuse, a guy go to Virginia. They're losing players to Power Conference schools. So that's what happens when you win, right? And players have success, and it's a larger. There's more eyeballs on the program now because of the Conference USA TV deal. So a lot more people get to see New Mexico State football, which is great. But when you have success and more people see you, sometimes that leads to you losing players, during the transfer portal era.
Yep. Well, we talked about, maybe some opportunities there that they might be looking at, but what would you say is the main strength of this team going into 2024?
I think it's definitely offensive line. Barring injuries, the offensive line is set. And they have pretty good depth behind those guys. It's so key on offense, right? Especially when you're going through a transition at quarterback, especially when you lost some key running backs, to have that stabilizing force up front. And I joked with Keenan Yarrow, the returning center, on a podcast a while back. I said, we don't talk about the offensive line when you're doing well. Unfortunately, the media talks about the offensive line when they're struggling. And I said, we didn't talk about you guys enough last year because you were so consistent. You played so well. So I don't care who your quarterback is, who your running back is. If your offensive line is disjointed, if you get a lot of pre-snap penalties, it's going to set the offense back. And I just don't anticipate that being a problem. I feel like that crew is really going to help with the transition at both positions. And I remind folks as well that Diego Pavia, when he came here, it wasn't like Diego was somebody that everybody was talking about. We were his only FBS offer. So there's a chance that one of those quarterbacks can emerge and be a go-to guy and, be that diamond in the rough that nobody was talking about going into the year.
Well, we talk about guys going to P4 schools. When it comes to the recruitment of new players, the retention of existing players, because you have to do that kind of throughout the season, it seems like. How has the NIL and the transfer portal impacted New Mexico State?
Well, it's impacted it a lot, but the NIL collective's been really good. Paul Grindstaff runs the collective, and Paul's an all-star. I mean, they were ahead of this, It wasn't like they were running behind. This was coming. Paul was on it. They do really well, especially for Conference USA Group of 5. So that's not a problem. It's just, it's hard for a Group of 5 to compete with an SEC program when those SEC programs are, recruiting your players that win the portal. So, I don't think New Mexico State is ever going to worry about an SEC program taking players. It would be an issue if they were losing key players to Group of 5 schools, and that's not the case. It's players that are going to P5 programs. I mean, the 4th string quarterback is at a Power Conference program. So it says a lot about what the program did the last 2 years, especially last year. The collective's been unbelievable, and the coaching staff's been unbelievable at losing players. and then finding a way to regroup and see what you need, and then kind of retooling the roster on the fly, because that's not an easy process.
Well, it seems more and more like the demands of a head coach are really turning into more of like this general manager type role between the recruiting, player retention, fundraising, and less of the X's and O's role. I know Sanchez, has been with the team for a while, but not too long as head coach. What do you see happening there at New Mexico State? Is there like a general manager type role already there that he can focus on the X's and O's, or is he that general manager type person going out doing all that fundraising and whatnot?
He's doing a lot of that. I mean, it almost feels like he's working, 24 hours a day, every single day. He's always on the go. They do a lot of fundraising stuff with NIL supporters, local sponsors, and he's always there. He's visible. He's a great public speaker, and he's extremely likable. And part of that too is he's an alum. If somebody from the outside comes in, they can talk the talk and, maybe speak the lingo, but I mean, his blood, sweat, and tears are in this place. I recall 2 years ago, we did an interview with him after practice one day, and it was rivalry week. They were about to play UTEP that weekend, and he came over and he had a bloody nose. I mean, his nose was cracked. And I asked him what happened. I said, "Coach, you're bleeding." He said, "I know." And I said, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "Well, I just did a post-practice speech to the team, and I got so fired up, I headbutted one of the guys, and he had a helmet on." He's like, "I'm good though. We're playing UTEP Saturday." So, like, he gets it, and you can't teach that to somebody who's coming in from the outside. I mean, his blood, sweat, and tears are in that stadium, and now he gets the chance to be the head coach at his alma mater, which is awfully cool and so rare.
And like you said, like you can't fake that. Like
You
it's
can't.
like, and people can see through fake, and they buy in when they see stuff like that.
Yeah, it's so rare to have an alum leading a program. And it's so rare to have an alum already on the staff ready to lead the program if there was a coaching switch. And that's what happened. I mean, Jerry Kill left, and it was during Christmas. I think it might have been like Christmas Eve or the day after Christmas, but it was right around Christmas. I mean, I was at a Christmas party when the news broke, and it wasn't long after that Tony Sanchez was the guy named as the head coach. And it's really hard to be able to promote somebody like that with FBS head coaching experience. And, he was ready to go. So, it was a decision that was probably pretty easy for athletics director Mario Mocha.
Well, given all the changes in coaching staff and personnel, what does success look like in 2024 for the Aggies?
That's a good question, because I've seen a lot of that on social media, and the expectations now are so high. When I got here, it was 3-9, it was 2-10, it was 3-9. Rarely did they get to 4-8, and then you win 7 games 2 years ago, and then the expectations start to kick up. Then we're expecting bowl games. Well, last year they get to 10 pretty early, right? They get to double-figure wins early. They were getting top 25 votes. They punched their ticket to the Conference USA title game relatively early. So, I think those are the expectations now. And if you told somebody 3 years ago, "Hey, we're going to Conference USA and we want to get championships," and I think a lot of people would be like, "Okay, slow your roll a little bit." But that's the expectation now. I mean, you get there and you taste it, you get the double-figure win. So I know from the fans' perspective, from the players' staff perspective, it's get back to a bowl game again and compete for a conference championship.
Well, is there anything else that you would like to share or think that we should know about this 2024 New Mexico State Aggie football team?
It's an exciting time for the program. It really is. It's an interesting time because, I do think pre-transfer portal, if they were returning what they had last year, what would have been back if there wasn't a portal, expectations would be extremely high. I mean, if you had a lot of those guys back that still had eligibility that transferred, I think people around here would be completely buzzing. But I do think there's a little bit of let's wait and see from the fan base, because there's a lot of names they've never heard of before. But I also think they were in some living rooms and able to get some guys that maybe they wouldn't have got a couple of years ago because of where the program currently is, the success of the program the last 2 years. I think they're able to get a better player nowadays. So I'm excited for August 31st. And August 31st is going to be fun game 2 against Liberty, that's the big test, right? I mean, that's a rematch of the title game from last year. And I think we'll find out a lot against SEMO, but we're really going to find out a lot in week 2.
Well, Adam, thank you again for sharing your time and knowledge with us today.
Appreciate you having me. Go Aggies. Thanks so much.
All right. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you are listening to us in podcast form, please rate and review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Thank you all for your support. And until the next time, we are the G5 Hive.